So this video is going to cover, starting in the middle of the Bronze Age, we now have government involved with money. So these round metals and money coinage now became standardized by the government. And then the government took this concept a step forward into paper money. So we'll cover these topics, and we're also going to introduce the problem of trust, which is a very important topic. So around the middle of the Bronze Age, the use of metals as a medium of exchange as money, this was common. And standardization, though, was initially lacking. And standardization is something that you need to help with society-wide acceptance and convenience. And what this picture here is, this was a coin made by a blacksmith or a merchant, and these individuals were attempting to add some sort of standardization, some kind of marking to where you could just quickly look at this piece of metal and determine its weight and its value. So these individuals were trying to solve this problem. But in this time frame, government became the issuer of currency. And the government allowed for, or the government provided this mass standardization. And this change here from individual ownership of money to government as the authority now to issue the money is an important concept. And here's the time frames, some time frames when government money came to be. And from the government point of view, the process for coinage is pretty straightforward. Governments would collect metals from individuals or businesses during the course of their operations. Governments would use companies to go and mine these metals. These metals would then go to some kind of production facility, and they would be transformed from the raw metal into this standardized coinage, which the standardized coinage is going to help improve all four of these aspects of the properties of money, and then the coins are distributed to the population. And paper money that was backed by metal had one additional piece to this process. So we would take the coins out of the coin production, and now we would lock them inside of a vault, a very, very safe vault, and a receipt would be issued on behalf of these coins. And this piece of paper here would be redeemable to the government for one piece of silver or one piece of gold. It was a receipt for that value. And this is the idea of money being backed by metal. And when it comes to the four properties of money, paper money provided just more options to get after these properties. So you could see one sheet of paper can now be worth one coin. It can be worth 100 coins. So it helped with divisibility and transportability. And because it was redeemable for metal, it also kept value. And with government enforcement, acceptance was not really an option. And paper money started in these dates. China was way ahead of the curve, and this had to do with the amount of land that the Chinese dynasty had. It was much larger for the one central authority, and they had to travel very long distances to collect taxes. So they had a compelling reason to make money lighter and more divisible sooner. So now, going back to the start of the government involvement with money and standardization, here's one way to look at the key difference. So before government was involved, these two individuals here, this piece of metal that came from the earth, no one else had to be a part of this transaction. These were just two individuals, peer-to-peer exchange. But when you have a central authority issuing the currency, this is in effect a third party that's now involved in the transaction. There's many names that this goes by. And so one way to look at this man in the middle and how exchanges were now happening in a society, there were advantages to this, which possibly why it happened in the first place. It guaranteed societal acceptance, make it really hard to forge by really harsh penalties. Very, very convenient step to take. But the disadvantages that were learned is the middleman, the issuer of the currency, must be trusted not to do a number of things. And there's a name for this problem. And this is called the problem of trust. And around this time is when the problem of trust became prevalent in our society. And this is important because this problem is one of the two problems that Bitcoin seeks to address. And I'm using government as an example just because I think it's easier to relate and learn. But really, the problem of trust applies to any transaction, PayPal, Amazon, and so on, when you have a central authority. There's going to be a future section devoted solely for this problem. Just to give a quick overview, here's one example here of inflation via coin clipping. And the problem of trust is not a small problem. And the reason being is a middleman in this transaction. They also bring their own problems to solve. They bring their own agenda. And in government's example, for the government's example, these are the items that they were bringing into this transaction. These are their agenda items. And also in this middleman relationship, and for this piece of for the function that the middleman does, there's no natural checks and balances that are occurring to make sure that this entity here, this middleman, stays fair. And the last point to conclude, for this change here also marked a change in the trend of store of value. So for the hundreds of thousands of years as money had been evolving, we were progressing, and every time we made a step forward, we were accomplishing more and more of these facets of money. We could become more divisible, we'd become more transportable, and these trends continued all the way up until government became involved to introduce standardized coinage. At this point, the store of value trend went from positive to negative. After governments got involved with money, the store of value function now started to decrease over time. And this is due to the example we just looked at, government having their own agendas and their own problems that they bring to the table.